because also our nature, like intrinsically, before humans were civilized and modernized, and we were evolving. If you think about it, there were always looking out for threats constantly, right? So it's in your nature to want to look at these potential threats and analyze and say, what's a risk? What's a risk? What's a risk? It's your survival instinct at work. And when you're reading that, Doomsday article, it's feeding that. But if you actually look at the data of what's happened over time, it's probably not gonna come to fruition.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Unqualified Advice, an entertaining show for entertainment purposes. Join us as we talk about running our businesses, what we've been learning, and how we're applying lessons from academia and real life as entrepreneurs and investors. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Topics discussed represent opinions represented by parties with different circumstances than your own and should not be taken as advice. Any discussion of securities or other investments should not be relied upon as investment advice. Consult your personal financial advisor and perform your own due diligence. Podcast hosts, guests, and clients of Fig Social Capital may own positions in securities discussed in this podcast.
Go with it.
Sean, I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and before we joined here this morning, it's been a pipe full of synthwave over here. and I'm ready for like some workout videos and some wrist warmers and stuff,
That's perfect. I've been taking some trainings on AI stuff, which has put me in a weird headspace. So I think you might be in a little bit better headspace than I'm at right now.
I don't know. Maybe it's similar. I was thinking to myself while listening to some of these 80s jams, like, it seems so you could peg the decade pretty easily if you're, exposed to music or whatever. But like, how futuristic some of this stuff had to have sounded.
Yeah.
When you just like put on a 70s playlist and then move it over to like Synthwave, which was 6 years later. It's like, whoa.
Does it still feel futuristic to you today when you listen to
some of it? I feel like it could be, especially if I don't even know if this is right. I'm not educated enough to know, but like if it was recorded with newer equipment, like the instruments don't have to be newer, but something about the recording, the clarity or like the fidelity or something, I think would, if it was fuller, I don't have the words, but I feel like there are times when I wouldn't be able to tell you definitively that was 40 years ago. 40 years ago. That's crazy.
Right? Almost 50 on some of them.
Yeah.
When I hear that music, like what was one you shared with me yesterday?
Rain, girl, make it rain.
Well, I actually know I'm singing specifically "Night Call" by Kavinsky. That's a modern song that sounds very much like the 80s. But also to me, when I hear it, it feels still futuristic. Like it almost feels like it belongs in like a futuristic dystopian movie. I think it's in Drive, but it feels like it could belong in or stuff of that genre. Just feels like it could belong in the next Blade Runner when they make
Blade
it.
Runner. Yeah, okay, I'm with you there. I was gonna say something like futuristic, as if we landed on the moon.
Yeah, that too.
Because it feels like we haven't. Because it's been so long.
That's been a minute. Well, we did it. We just said
there was no synthwave when we were landing on the moon. Like,
no,
we gotta go back and do it again.
That's true. Yeah, we need to be out in outer space for synthwave to feel right, I guess. So maybe Elon will get us there.
Oh my God, yeah.
I want. Yeah, what'll be the first song played on Mars?
Maybe Grimes has that locked down.
Good answer. I think
she's got that lock,
I want or will NASA be able to on like a rover have a speaker, and just like symbolically play?
Are there enough like molecules in the
I don't think
lack of air to make sound work?
Yeah, I don't think so. Actually, good point. You'd need atmosphere, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be a radio transmission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it'll be a long time because you're gonna have to terraform it. And well, I guess if you're there in pods, right? You have pressurized pods. That would be the first instance of music being played.
Did you ever read or watch Martian?
Yes, I watched it. I never read the book. I should actually probably check that one out. It was such a good movie.
It's a fun read.
Yeah.
His other one, now I'm spacing on the name, the newer Artemis. Also good. Just like blast through it. Really fun read. Really hard. Like I lost sleep because it was hard to put down at night. Yeah.
Okay. Those are good. I haven't had one of those in a while.
The last one I had, the most recent one was 5 Decembers. By someone with the last name Kestrel or something.
Okay.
It's like a not cheesy. Well, maybe. The cover, it was recommended to me, and then I saw the cover. If I saw the cover, I wouldn't have bought the book, like without the recommendation, right? It just seems like a cheesy detective novel, but it was just fun read.
Okay, what was it
Honolulu,
called?
Hong Kong, Manila, 5 Decembers.
Decembers.
It was the 5 Decembers, like preceding and after World War II.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, all in the Pacific Theater, following like one dude's life in those 5 Decembers.
Interesting. Okay, I might have to give that one a check out for
if you
some
need
fun
a distraction.
Reads.
Yeah,
I feel like
something.
I feel like the last book I had that was one that just kept me up was, it's been a while, but I think it was like maybe a Joe Nesbo even, like the Harry Hole series. I was really into Scandinavian crime for the period and read
Scandinavian crime. What makes Scandinavian crime different than?
It's just the dark, like, I don't know, the Scandinavian writers, when they write, they have this like darkness about it that I enjoy.
See, this is what I thought I would get out of Seattle when I moved there, but it didn't happen. I like the Scandinavian darkness.
Yeah. Like in tone and in like the description of the places. And so who have I read from there? Harry Hole's series by Joe Nesbo, the Erlander series by Arnaldur Indridason, who's Icelandic. And then the series, it's a Swedish series. It was also made into a BBC series of films. What was his name?
Okay, I might give this Harry Hole thing a go.
Yeah, I think I'll start with actually Stieg Larsson's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. So Henning Mankell is the other author. And he wrote a series about Kurt Wallander.
Yeah, sure.
Kurt Wallander.
Okay.
Henning Mankell wrote a series about Kurt Wallander, this lead detective that spanned, more or less, it was like a 20-year coverage of his life in the series that was really interesting. So for some reason, all these authors end up going into like Africa at some point. There's always a book in Africa. I don't know why.
Yeah. Why did Toto write that song? Speaking of songs I listened to this morning.
I haven't listened to Toto in forever. Wait, you gave me a question, I lost it.
Well, here's my question: Where would you recommend people start with this Scandi detective crime genre?
I think Nesbo's Harry Hole is definitely the.
Okay.
And they made a couple of movies out of those because they were really popular. I would just pick one of the series, start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that was.
I might do that.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if he's written any new ones lately. I haven't looked in a couple of years. He might have a couple more. I might have to go check back out.
You can pick up Artemis or Martian or 5 Decembers. All three of those are just like,
okay.
I thought they were just really fun. I'm going to pick up Harry Hole. Now, for our study session / homework / nonfiction assortment, I think we've both begun Sovereign Individual.
I have. I'm about a quarter of the way through it so far.
Oh, good. Okay, further than me. I think I just finished chapter 2 or something.
Okay, yeah. I'm. What chapter is that? Put me in like 4 or 5.
Okay.
What are your first couple chapters? What are your impressions with what you've seen so far?
It's a big slog of a book.
Yes, it is. It's very long.
Yeah. It seems as though the ideas are just sprinkled throughout. I really wish there was like a PDF companion. Because I can't say that like nonfiction can be tricky for me sometimes. And I would imagine it's this way for everyone except for the top 1% smart weirdo people that we've got. I feel like it's a kind of book that like if I lose grasp of my attention, I'm extremely likely to miss like an important sentence mixed in with the pages and pages of detailed history about knighthood that I don't care about. Do I need the lesson on why chivalry existed and why it was romanticized and why our view of chivalry is completely mismatched with reality of what chivalry was back in the day? Is that somehow going to set something up in chapter 7 that I
don't know. Maybe it's a good question.
I don't know either.
I doubt it.
It is.
I don't see it coming.
I doubt it.
There were some interesting things that I did learn around some of the knighthood concepts and how that was. What did I learn versus no? Like it reinforced the ideas of their importance to the economy.
Knights?
Yeah.
What? How?
And maybe this is something he's building into that maybe a little further in, but how so basically a knight to become a knight, the set of armor was basically the equivalent worth of like 30 sheep. The horse was worth like 20 sheep. I'm sorry, the armor was like 60 sheep and the horse was like 20 sheep. And so thinking about how really to, get the technology, at that early stage, it was really you had to be wealthy or be sponsored. Right. So it's kind of interesting how I understanding a little more on that militaristic side of the importance of that technology and the feudalistic landscape and the way that the feudal economy worked and developed into then these little clusters that were, kind of almost they were almost individual sovereignties in a way, right? Little city states.
Well, that's the build that he got, or whoever got into, right?
Yeah.
It was this feudalistic, atomized enclaves into statehood.
I agree. They spent they went a little too much on it, maybe. But there were some stuff I gleaned, at least.
Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, like if they were to present the argument of like, well, feudal states worked like this, and they were knights, and blah blah blah, and it might seem like a raw deal, but the serfs kind of had like no option. It was basically foreclosure or give everything to your lord. And now you had these little fiefdoms, and the knights protected you, and the nobles waged war of expansion, and blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't England, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden it was about nation states, and it was England.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be like, wait, how did we get there? What's your... So I feel like they do a good job of, despite the meandering, they do build you into the position that, like, I didn't have any trouble understanding where we came from to explain where we got to.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose we're getting, the whole point is to show statehood, nation statehood into whatever this next thing that they're proposing.
I think what they're trying to, what they're doing is exploring that. And they kind of say it early on, forecasting through the use of historical analysis, essentially looking at how these trends played out at these transition points during they start to get into the Industrial Revolution, which is actually, I learned a few things there. They posit that it really started much earlier than most, a lot of historians say, because the technology was really starting to be used earlier, and we measure it by when we start to see improvement in living standards a lot of times, which is like 18th century time frame, versus a lot of that was the living standards kind of a lagging indicator, and really a lot of it was happening much more in the like 14th and 15th century, in terms of how the politics of the society changed, and the church becoming displaced as a result. I'll let you get to it in the book. They do a wonderful job of kind of building an interesting argument there, or interesting point.
There was another term that they was like mega political or something like that.
Yeah. I need to get my head wrapped around it
okay.
more.
Every time I hear it, I feel like in context, I'm like, oh, I follow. I'm on board. And then I'm like, then I go back and I'm like, can I explain mega political movement, whatever it is?
It's almost like a macroeconomic trend, right? It's like there's it's the
less about economics is in there, but it's like bigger than economics.
No, yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's more about policy and like
political economy.
Yeah, political economy, philosophy of how the people believe and behave and think, and the society around that. I think is kind of like that. The mega political term is kind of I'm just using it. Macroeconomic is like the closest analog I can think of.
Yeah,
then maybe as they continue to use it, I'll develop more insights into what their meaning is. So I think we'll probably learn more about that term and have a much different feeling of it when we're at the end of the book than where we are right now.
What do you want out of this book?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think coming into it, I had heard a lot of comparisons to the Fourth Turning, which obviously we talk a lot about. And so I just wanted to understand maybe why those comparisons were being made as much as anything, and to see if I thought they were, if it was of that level of thought. And I would say so far it's an interesting companion piece as they're taking a similar tact of analyzing these historical cycles in predicting, more of what the future. I think they're going to get to specifically what the future government they think will look like. One thing I'll say is I think they were kind of short-sighted about the capability and ability of the government to actually handle some of the things and control the digital economy in a way that I don't think they envisioned. And I think that was a little short-sighted on their part, because they're positing that the world is going to change because you won't have to, rely on, fiat currency or really the government won't be able to control how taxes are levied on online purchases and things like that. And Dan, as you know, that is not the case.
No. There was a lot more skirting of taxes before e-commerce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually,
way
if
more.
Because
everything is legible now. By legible by machines and therefore by government.
Exactly.
If I go pay a guy $5 cash for something, no one needs to know. And that happened a lot. I mean, it's still happening, but that used to happen a lot more.
Yeah,
there were more opportunities to do that.
Yes.
Now you cannot buy something on my site and do it in an illegible way.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a permanent record of everything, in a much more organized way than ever before. And even, you could say, oh, well, crypto is that new, taking away the strength of the fiat currency. And sure, I don't see it, because
it's not nearly as anonymous as it was said to be when it was first coming out. Like because
of the way we're having to actually utilize.
I think it's giving government some power
to make crypto actually usable in our economy. You have to build in these other systems. And, with the KYC, the know your customer requirements, it's basically impossible to use it in a way that would replace the dollar in our economy at the moment. The way it's current, at least that's my view of it. Maybe I'm short-sighted or not seeing something.
No, I don't know. I mean, I always USDC maybe is like something, but the whole Bitcoin thing.
Yeah,
I
think there's a different argument to say for digital transactions. There's utility in it, but I don't see it's going to. I will say though, I know people who transfer money internationally get a lot of utility out of it. So there's use cases, and it can be a lot cheaper for certain things. So I think it's going to
What
continue
was
to be
do you have a window into what their alternative was prior to
wire
just
transfers.
Western Union wire
Yeah,
transfers?
very like that were relatively slow, and also the fees would be 50, 80, $90 to send a transfer.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were able to do it much lower, which is if you're only
Find a
sending
different
$200. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
right?
no. I mean, I just sent a wire transfer the other day of $85. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I had to. It was just a thing that needed to get done, but like, I can't. It's a long story, but yeah,
That sucks. Because what's the wire transfer cost at a bank? $25, $50.
I mean, it depends on the bank, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it depends on your benefits at the bank. My situation is one where I think it's normally $45, and then sometimes they discount it to $35. And then if you are a certain tier member, then it gets waived. So on my account, I get charged, and then it disappears at the end of the month.
Nice.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
I can't complain for $0. I only send a handful of wires each month.
Yeah.
But a handful of wires every single month at $35, $45 a pop, that's begins to be a real expense.
Exactly. And again, if you're internationally, you might be wiring money back to family. It might not be a large amount. A lot of times it might be, smaller portions. So it can be a big percentage. So if they're able to reduce that with better technology, by all means, let's do it. Because the way ACH works, the automated clearinghouse, it's a noodly mess of if you ever
all
look
of it
at
is.
if you ever look at who's all the parties involved, it's nuts.
It is nuts. Yeah. And it's no wonder it takes so long. Like even with the wires, it's like, oh yeah, cool, wires work this way. And then it's like, oh, but if you don't send it by 3:00 Eastern, what?
Why isn't your computer just there doing this? That's it's why is it?
Did someone shut the computer off at 3?
Yeah.
And I understand that, like, I don't know, probably more used to be than is now, but like it's got to get cleared or checked by a human or something. And like, I don't know, I feel like computers can do those checks better than humans these days. So like, let's get on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, between banking and healthcare, there's a lot of like, well, healthcare blew up. Well, that's probably bad. There was a big happening in the world of healthcare that exposed, I think, an attitude amongst the American people that some people had no idea existed. It appears.
Yeah. You're clearly talking about Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Yeah. The United Healthcare assassination is. I am surprised at the spread of the reaction. Right. The spread of it, like the diversity of the reaction, and some of the size of like
the diversity of the reaction.
Yeah, like I'm pretty like, this is terrible. Like, what the hell? This is
murder's never okay.
Yeah,
you do business in the boardroom.
And then there's people saying, well, you have to understand that they see denial of claims as violence. I'm like, is it? I guess. I don't like. Yeah, just I mean,
I can understand it. It doesn't make it okay.
Yeah. Exactly. I feel like there's more. I don't know. There's more defending of. Well, and I guess it's really not that much. I don't know. It's just there's some loud. It's a few loud people, right?
Is it though? I thought it was much.
Like, well, what do you think? What do you think?
For the camp of murder is okay. It is way bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
and I would say people maybe in your life that feel that way that have not said it out loud to you. That's what I mean by bigger.
Yeah, and
or like way bigger than I thought. Right, like. When it happened, as soon as I saw the headline, I was like, kind of not surprised.
Mm-hmm. No, I wasn't surprised. It didn't surprise me that this occurred at all. It was not a shocking occurrence. It was frankly, I'm surprised it hadn't happened before.
Me too. Yeah, I know. But that says a lot about where people are at with their relationship with healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, right? It does not function properly at the moment. I don't know if it does anywhere. I guess it does, but...
I think it's a little broken everywhere. Yeah. It's either, it's like totally accessible and you can get anything you want for pennies and it's terrible. Like level of care isn't high, or it's like modern care, but either it's like Getting access to it is true troublesome because there's not enough capacity because it's all single payer and government controlled. And then I don't know. Yeah, look at look at any of the advanced countries, and you can pick up your flavor of failure somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think any system, if you go and look closely, there's problems under each of them. So, well,
what do you do?
Yeah, you don't scrap the system. I think you got to keep just iterating it, right? But it's such a big thing to iterate that it's hard to just the sheer volume of dollars moving through it and all the transactions and like the way that hospital price books work is just insane. How they set their
no one
standard.
Can tell me the price of anything.
Yeah, no, because they set their standard costs so high so that like I think it helps them then when they negotiate with an insurance company say, oh well, we gave you a 30% break off of our standard cost of this $300 nitrile glove, and they don't ask why is I don't know. I'm sure they do, but it doesn't feel right sometimes.
Yeah, why is 2 ibuprofen $85?
Right?
Because it was delivered to my room.
Mm-hmm.
I could have DoorDashed a whole bottle.
For less than that. No shit.
Yeah. Fees and everything. Fee, tip, and all that.
Yeah. You didn't even get a cut of this, did you, nurse?
Yeah. Are you working on commission?
Oh. That's a fun idea.
It is. Yeah. Actually, that's the thread to pull on. How do you change, like, really, really broad strokes?
Yeah.
Like, how do you change the incentive structure so that you get like more outcomes of what, like?
That's a good question. Yeah. What, like?
Because the incentives are all screwed up. Like, the person that took the fall here was an insurance company executive.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the main problem in the healthcare structure? And I was like, I don't know that it's just health insurance. I think there's like some deep-seated other things in there it
also leaks into education too. I was thinking about this driving down the interstate this week, driving by University of Texas's MD Anderson Cancer Center. And it's like, what's the relationship there between, because there's also, UT has a number of branches of different hospitals around the area that they're somehow partnered with. I don't know what, like, I assume that their med school is feeding into these hospitals and helping create, giving them places to work and stuff like that. So like, think about then how that system is not just, it's endemic in like how deep the roots go is what I'm trying to say. To understand then how the economic incentives aligned, like who is getting paid for the care. Is it by going whom? By whom? And is it going into, like if they're saying this is a teaching hospital or it's sponsored by the University of Texas somehow, how is that money tied up, or where what's funding what? I don't.
Oh, you know what? Okay. Like, it's fun to talk about, but like you and I are both we're like already out over our skis in terms of understanding the different players and money movements here. But you know what I want? You know how, what's the Twitter account? Conks?
Yeah.
He does these like Federal Reserve or like Fed repo, like flowchart things, super crazy detailed things about money movements.
I didn't know BNY Mellon did so much stuff, man.
It's crazy. But anyway, I want him to do healthcare. Like, just do one hospital system and then do one.
That's a great idea.
Small independent pediatrics center, right? Like, because there's still like 85 counterparties.
Yeah. For just like one hospital payment, essentially. Like, what is the
the supply chain of money on those? And
I wonder
begin to disassemble the incentive structure.
I wonder how publicly transparent that is to be able to even be researched and diagrammed. I'm sure it's possible, but I don't know where you would begin.
There's some hedge fund with an analyst at a desk somewhere that's like got it all in his head or her head.
Yeah. I guess because it's a private transaction versus, how regulated are those transactions too? There has to be some regulation on how they flow and how they're recorded and documented.
That would be like the next pane of what I would want, right? It's like if you're going to double click on anything, it would be, and this is why this particular relationship or transaction has to be the way that it is. You can't change it without Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. The boxes in red are locked in by law.
Locked in by, which I think would be illuminating, right? Like if you want to fix anything, it's like, yeah, you got to know the source of what you want to fix. Is it people's attitudes? Is it, we've always done it this way, why should we do it differently? Or is it law?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Because in healthcare, there's a bunch of those.
That's true. Like people's attitudes about the system here, and with this assassination, and saying they're frustrated, they're angry. Absolutely, again, I think very understandable. Like I think it's relatable. I'm not even.
That's relatable.
I don't even think they're crazy for feeling this. I think I get it. I'm surprised how many people do feel that way. In a way, and I guess
There's a piece by, I think the author's name is Graham Wood in The Atlantic, that sort of wrote up a piece about this, about the ugliness of this particular attitude, and how, from his take, it just feels sort of uncivil, un-American, sort of, I'd have to go back and pull more of the right words out of it.
I hear what you're saying.
But ugly was one word that I know that he used, yeah. Like I said, like I can understand why and where it's coming from, yeah. But that doesn't mean it's okay. But why are so many people capable of feeling this virulent? Is that the right word? No?
I mean, is it easily spread? Could you if you get butter the right temperature, could you call it virulent?
Just get rid of this part.
Sorry.
It's a little mob-like.
Ooh, yeah. So
In both its
maybe
contagion.
virulent might be a right word. Yeah, it is
Because
the right word.
like as soon as I find two other people that I'm close-ish with that feel this way, maybe it becomes okay for me to feel this way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Nobody throws rocks in the crowd until one person does, right?
Yeah.
Then it's that first shot that's fired. Then
the escalations happen, right? Someone throws a rock, and then someone throws a bottle, and then the next bottle has a flaming rag in it.
Yeah. I don't know how I don't think you could escalate this in that way. I'm not thank gosh, but yeah.
I don't know that I would say that anything is escalatable. Although security teams have probably completely blown up at this point in size and budget.
Good day to be in this independent security contractors, right?
Yeah, all the retired Green Berets and SEALs have gotten pay raises, I'm sure.
Axon's doing all right, I guess.
Axon, but they do body cams, yeah. Private security aren't going to be wearing those.
I think they do tasers and stuff too.
Okay.
I
don't know. Your former SEAL doing private security, you're packing, man.
True. Well, you might be packing both, is what I'm saying. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, you could be. I don't know enough about the inner workings of those decisions.
Yeah.
Much less
I don't
public scrutiny than police officers. I'm going to do some wildfire here on things I don't understand in our shared note. Ennui and the Zeitgeist. To Zeitgeist. 9 buffalo. Buffalo are in Asia, by the way. If you want the American version, it's bison.
Oh.
I learned that by living in the Great Plains here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why has that been allowed to?
The same reason why we call a certain kind of person an Indian here, even though they are not.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, how did that
That's
start?
a conjecture.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Bison. So I was just noticing, you had mentioned it, and then I just heard people use the word ennui a lot in the last month or a couple months.
Okay.
So I'm like,
yeah.
why is the term ennui now suddenly kind of in the zeitgeist?
Because it's like shopping for a Forerunner and then all of a sudden seeing lots of Forerunners.
Okay, I'm gonna disagree with you on this.
Okay.
I have one reason why. Because I have a book on my shelf by Kurt Vonnegut. I forget which book it was in, but but I know I have because it's the first time I saw the word. I underlined it and I looked it up. And I'm like, that's an interesting word. And I've dropped it occasionally from time to time. I've heard it in a song years ago. It just blew up, I swear. And I think part of it is Inside Out, too, right? That's one of the main characters is Ennui. So I think that's got to be it.
That's got to be, yeah.
It's just interesting to me. Like I've loved the word for so long, and like it never heard anybody use it. Now I'm just like all the freaking time. I love it. Like it's great, excellent. We're all learning this complicated emotional term. It's kind of like in a way one of those Japanese words that feels like it has like a very specific meaning that like you can't just replicate with other words type of situation.
Like Schadenfreude.
Yeah, exactly. It's like okay, yeah, that you can't describe that with any other word.
I'm not going to say the English sentence that it takes to say up that word. I'm going to move that word into my lexicon. Yeah,
exactly. And then and I also feel like I've been hearing zeitgeist more the last couple of months, or maybe that's just me because we were talking. But that one very well could be the shopping for a RAV4 and start seeing RAV4s everywhere. We'll just delete that off. I can get that out of my headspace now. Speaking of words, another thing on our list here, one word that kind of crystallized for me a little differently this week was the word overkill, from the book that we're discussing earlier.
Sovereign Individual.
Thank you.
Yeah, because like in there he does an interesting. Who wrote it? I don't even know. Anyway, lots of discussion around hunter-gatherer societies and how, you might work 8 to 15 hours a week. There was no wake-up schedule. It's like remarkably lazy because there was no incentive for overworking. And overworking often meant you needed more calories, which put the group in danger.
Exactly. And I've used the term so many times, just saying, "Oh, that's too much. That's overkill," without really thinking about what it means and what it was describing. And
wasted food because you made too big of a kill.
Yeah, and it's like, man, that really is a more powerful word than we really give it credit for if you know what it means.
Yeah, because we've been so disconnected from.
Yeah, exactly.
The outcomes that made this word what it is.
Yeah, it's just become a meaningless kind of throwaway term in a way, but it really is it has a much deeper meaning. I don't know. Those words pop up every once in a while. I'm like, oh man, I've never really thought about the word in that way. And it's just a stupid compound word that has become part of our lexicon in different ways, and that's fine. Yeah. Language changes. Language is allowed to change. It's just interesting to me. Not complaining. I'm just noting. To answer your question, it's Sovereign Individual is written by James Dale Davidson and Lord William Rees-Mogg.
Wow.
With a intro by Peter Thiel. Yeah.
One of the other things that I'm having trouble with is like how quickly, or maybe this was in the maybe this was the Peter Thiel section. I don't know. But like all this doomsday-ish stuff around the year 2000 and like just so much time spent on that and so many going back to reference that. And it was just so wrong.
Yeah.
Like really setting this book up for like how often the conjectures are going to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I am feeling beyond yesterday's run. Yeah.
That's kind of where I am as well. And again, I think they underestimated the power and responsiveness of some of our institutions and our society
and humans generally.
I think they're, from the looks of it, they're saying they're trying to paint this picture of why they predict that we're going to be a much more fragmented society where the nation state is weaker. And their argument is that, the individuals will be, stronger and won't need to rely on the nation state. But also I would argue back, people like it. Like you would be making society worse with this. And I don't think people by and large want that. We like the Doomsday stuff.
A minority of people want that. Like
yeah, we like this Doomsday stuff because it's interesting. It's fun.
Yes,
it feeds something in our inner selves that like because also our nature, like intrinsically when before humans were civilized and modernized and we were evolving, if you think about it, there were always looking out for threats constantly, right? So it's in your nature to want to look at these potential threats and analyze and say, what's a risk? What's a risk? What's a risk? It's your survival instinct at work. And when you're reading that, Doomsday article or that Doomer article, it's feeding that. But if you actually look at the data of what's happened over time, it's probably not gonna come to fruition in such a dramatic way. Like, I think there's interesting things that are bringing up, and I want to see what interesting ideas they have that might actually apply. But yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be well off the mark of what really happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
But it's fun.
I think it is totally fun. And going back to you saying it's a good companion piece for the fourth turning. I couldn't agree more. The thing about the fourth turning is like, I think it would be easy to like listen to us talk about Sovereign Individual here when we're both like 2 to 4 chapters into it. Mm-hmm. Even though we're like raving about like, oh, you got to read the fourth turning. There's so many interesting concepts in there that, may or may not be true, but do somewhat map onto history. So maybe we can, use it to be predictive of possible future outcomes. Mm-hmm. But with the fourth turning, it feels like a map that is trying to do its best to lay onto a territory, whereas Sovereign Individual feels a little bit more like I went to the crystal ball, and it's like they're having to spend so much of the book on history so that it feels more grounded in something, rather than saying like, oh, we're just super idealistic and we are the 10% of all human beings who are extremely, not highly, extremely individualistic and highly agentic and want to carve our own path. And we would like to apply this upon all other humans, even though it's not going to work. Like, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to work that way. I don't think it's going to be attractive to most people. Most people like safety and comfort and kind of chillaxing.
Exactly, because it'll seem like a degradation, and why would we allow that to happen? Why wouldn't we then say, this is a degradation, let's fix it?
The hunter-gatherer thing was like exemplifying where they went wrong, I thought. I was like, so like humans prefer to not have alarms and prefer to like work 8 to 15 hours a week. Like that was nice, other than the maggots in the food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, what do you know of the other work that you say they weren't doing? Like, I question, like, were they, I don't know. I guess they have some basis there for some argument, but I don't know. I felt that was a point that didn't resonate with me either. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Or it felt dissonant, if anything. It didn't ring true.
Didn't even serve their purpose, is how I felt.
No. But again, we're too early in, so we'll maybe
yeah, very true. We're seeing a work in progress here.
Don't judge a book by its first. Don't judge a book by its first quarter or something.
I don't know. I've always taken the fail fast approach.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
if this isn't doing it, you throw it out. Like,
there's a book on my nightstand right now that's like, I don't know, got awards and everything, and I'm like, not hitting me right now.
What book?
It might. Demon Copperhead.
Not heard of it. Okay.
Yeah. I'll be honest. It felt too much like Backwoods Indiana. And I'm like, I've been there.
Yeah. Did you ever read any Ayn Rand?
I have not, actually.
I've gotten through The Fountainhead about 3/4 of the way twice.
That is funny to me. Did you listen to the Made You Think episode on? They did one or two Ayn Rand
I didn't.
books.
I'll check that one out though. That's a good suggestion.
Worth it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like, part of it I kind of like, but then it just ground, like, it just like.
Well, I hear the writing is terrible. The ideas can
awful.
be
It's not terrible. It's awful.
Okay.
Like, it's just like I'm just like the prose is not good. The communication, like the idea is fine, sure, okay, I get what you're going for, but I don't care.
Yeah, but then at that point, just give me a PDF.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I get it from I'm 18 years old and I'm reading The Fountainhead and I've been completely converted into this ideology, and then later I'll sprout into a more balanced version of it or whatever. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think as an 18, like that age group, I think there's a reason. You don't need, most people, you aside, don't need great prose. You at 18, you made fun of me for not knowing the word esoteric when I was like 20.
I believe that. Well, you
I was like,
just
what's
dropped
that
one
mean?
on me.
And you're like, you don't know that word. And I'm like,
you just dropped one on me. Agentic. I was like, that's a bingo word there.
that's a big... yeah. Ever since I got shamed by you, I've been better at picking up more
sorry.
words.
I was a
Don't
dick
be
when
sorry.
I was a kid.
Don't be sorry. It moved me in a good direction.
No, good.
Sometimes those things are good. Sometimes you need a slap in the face,
Yeah.
especially when you're a young man.
Read a book, damn it. What other books have been like that for you, where you've started and hadn't finished? Anything that you started and didn't finish and you came back to and got back into later? I have a couple like that.
Books have found me at different times. I'm going to have trouble coming up with an example, though.
Steinbeck did that for me with Winter of Our Discontent.
Okay.
Is one that comes to mind.
Try, and then when did it work? Ages.
Initially tried in college, worked after being out in the world for a couple of years. It was like 4 or 5 years later.
Okay. Why do you think it worked that way for you?
A lot of the core story is kind of around the relationship of the main character with his family, and I think, and like his wife, and I think having just more experience in love life at that point probably
you could connect to it more.
Yeah, I think I got it a little bit more at that point. I needed a little more life experience. I stopped.
That makes sense.
I stopped reading East of Eden. Speaking of Steinbeck, and I keep wanting to come back to that one because I felt like I was enjoying it, but I don't know why I stopped.
I would like to read that one.
Yeah, I haven't read any Steinbeck.
That's a big one, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 600 pages, maybe 500-600. Kind of chunky boy.
That's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like a chunky boy.
Me too,
My
man.
November didn't treat me all that great, or like I guess trailing 30 days.
Yeah,
I'd have to go and like.
That's fair. I was just curious if there's anything that might come to your mind. I'm trying to think of other books like I've picked up and then put down.
Murakami, Haruki Murakami. He wrote
these. I guess these would be books we specifically don't recommend.
Wait, what?
Nothing. I was just thinking. I was trying to think of books I picked up and put down. I'm like, why? So I can specifically say I don't recommend these books.
Avoid this. Yeah. Yeah. You might love it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather stay on the positive. Like my Goodreads
exactly.
account
I'm
is
like,
that
what am
way.
I talking about this?
It looks like I'm a non-discerning reader, but I'm just one that like I just put it down, and then if I didn't finish it, then I don't think I can put a star rating on it. So almost everything I've got on my Goodreads account is 4 or 5 stars. Those are the ones I finished.
That's self-selection bias on that. You're totally right. Because if you don't finish the book, you don't.
I don't think it's fair for me to type a 1 on something when I didn't give it a fair shot. But like, I'm also not going to spend a month reading something I don't want to read. Yeah. Anyway, more Murakami.
Yeah,
I
Murakami.
think I tried to start 1Q84. I think is it was like it came out big fanfare. It felt like the book found me, and I'm like, ooh, Japanese author, that's cool. Let me, and I couldn't. It wasn't even like I didn't like it. I just like wasn't the right time of my life or something. And then when we were traveling, I picked up his, I think, only nonfiction book, and it was What I Think About When I. What's it called? Hold on, I have to look it up. It should be noted. This is when I picked up my running habit.
Okay.
When we were traveling, and it's like a miniature memoir of his. What I talk about when I talk about running. And it was short, quick, not hard to read, and I just really loved it. And then I went back and read 2 more of his fiction books, and I want to read more. They're fantastical, is what I would call them.
Okay.
Have you ever read any of his before?
No, this is the first time hearing about it. It looks interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. Weird in a good way.
Weird in
Yeah.
a good way.
Yeah.
Weird in a good way. That's so it's hard to describe, but in a good way.
I think you would like it. I really do. Yeah.
No, it sounds kind of it sounds intriguing. I really haven't read much fiction this year. I'm gonna make a point to finish something over winter break.
Yeah.
Something fun.
Can you make the decision right here? Do it live.
You got me thinking of a couple ones. What did you recommend earlier in the episode? There was something you'd said.
5 Decembers?
Yes.
You would burn that in an afternoon, dude. Like,
all right, I'll commit to that. I'm gonna try that one over winter break. But yeah, maybe then I'll get onto some Murakami if I'm still feeling it. I don't know.
wow,
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah, 2009, 10.
One Q84 came out in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Or published in English in 2011. All right. Well, that's when I thought I was so highbrow.
What does that even mean to be highbrow at this point? Like, does that term still apply today?
Oh, I think it always applies, don't you? I think it's a state of projection.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that
you're right. You're right.
It means that you're trying to be interpreted as.
Yes, there you go. Okay, yeah. That feels right to me. That feels right to me. It's okay. That makes sense.
I think it's very and the reason why people don't like it is not that people shouldn't be punching up and trying to get better. It's just that it's fake. Mm-hmm. But also fake it until you make it. So I don't know, you know?
Yeah. You can't be if you want to be something, you have to be it, right? I guess.
To an extent, or at least, or be its antithesis. If you're, something's there. Like the complete embodiment of contrarian.
Mm-hmm.
That's very high.
Feels like that'd be a conflicting thing to be.
I guess what I mean is like the phrase like how am I supposed to change the system if you're telling me to leave the system? I need to change it from within. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you kind of have to be the anti-power or something in order to. This is very high thoughts right here.
Yeah. I can. It's a bit highbrow of you. But I can grok what you're saying, though. That makes sense.
Okay, let's get off of that one. I'm getting uncomfortable.
Well, that's another interesting compound word, highbrow. I wonder what the origins of that are. Like,
is it literally a brow? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to poke around, find the etymology of it.
I was gonna say, what's that? Yeah. What else we got? Anything?
Man, I don't know. No, let's say adios to everybody. Have a great week, and thanks for joining. I hope you guys are enjoying the weekly episodes that we're putting up here for the rest of the year, trying to hit that goal. Probably go back to bi-weekly after the start of the year. But a little extra content for the holidays for y'all. Otherwise, Dan, you got anything else you want to say?
Send us notes, feedback. Or just in any way that we can get better. But we appreciate all who are hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.